And I think the biggest thanks I owe is to this lady here, Gauhar Jaan, because she, I think, very inadvertently changed my life. I was in technical field. I was an engineer, a mathematics, person. Then MBA. I was struggling in the corporate world, daily cursing my life, literally saying, "Am I going to die one day?" Calculating the profit and loss of some American company, and nobody will really, even bother to know whether I lived or died. But then I think after the Mysore book, the manner in which she came into my life and totally catalyzed it. I think there are some occasions, some people, some circumstances which are destined, and I think this was certainly one of them. I was sitting in the dusty palace archives in the Mysore Palace, researching on my earlier book on the 600 years of the Vadiyars. In that, just one small chapter was on the visiting musicians who came to Mysore. Nimgella gottiro hange Mysore Samsthana, it was a melting pot of all kind of cultures. Adu Hindustani Sangita irbodu, Karnataka Shastriya Sangita irbodu, Paschatya Sangita. Today, people say fusion is confusion and all of that. But ಆ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ Otto Schmidt on the violin, ನಮ್ಮ ವೀಣೆ ಶೇಷಣ್ಣ, ಮಾರ್ಗರೆಟ್ ಕಜಿನ್ಸ್, ಅಬ್ದುಲ್ ಕರೀಂ ಖಾನ್, ಗೌಹರ್ ಜಾನ್, ಬರ್ಕತುಲ್ಲಾ ಖಾನ್, ಬಿಡಾರಾಮ್ ಕೃಷ್ಣಪ್ಪ, ಮುತ್ತಯ್ಯ ಭಾಗವತರ್, all of them were collaborating in this cultural project to literally make music have no boundaries. And I wanted to write something, one chapter or so on the musicians of Mysore, and there was a small little file which had about the visiting musicians, and probably 5-6 pages about this lady called Gauhar Jaan, who it said was India's first singing and dancing celebrity and gramophone superstar of her times. And that the very name Gauhar Jaan, I think all of us have grown up, seeing Umrao Jaan and Rekha and all of that. So there was a ring in that name that caught my fancy. And as I read a few pages that were there of her biography, that just fixated me. And they were bills, the starting thing that you saw. Bills that she owed to the baker, to the medical store, to some other person, the washerwoman, and she had died. And all of these people start claiming those bills after she passes away. And she's writing to the Maharaja's government, please increase my salary, 500 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ತುಂಬ ಕಮ್ಮಿ, ನನಗೆ ಇನ್ನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕೊಡಿ. And rejected, the in terse babudam, those messages come on the letter. And something about it, I said, in a whim of a moment, I said, I need to research about this lady. Not knowing really how to do it, because she was a Tawayaf, a courtesan. Like the Tawayafs and Devadasis, the north and the south, they really don't have legal heirs, no legal marriages, no known students also. So, and she had died in 1930 in Mysore. So how was I sitting in 2006 to research about this person? It can be madness, instantaneous, something can catch you, but how do you go about doing this? It was literally like chasing, searching for a needle in a haystack. But then, as I said, are they destined? Some things are so destined. The next 5 years of my life, she just occupied my heart, mind and soul all the time. And literally I chased her through the length and breadth of India, from Azamgarh where she was born, to Banaras where she converted, and I'll briefly take you through her life story, to Calcutta where she made her career, to Bombay where she had a lover, to Madras, to Darbhanga, to Rampur, every place where she gave musical performances, and then the final death in Mysore on 17th of January 1930. I also went outside India, to Berlin, to London, to ferret details of this woman. And it was literally like putting together pieces of a puzzle to reconstruct the story of her life and how she changed my life after that, because I managed to get an opportunity to do a PhD in history in a related subject in a university in Australia. That gave me the courage to leave my boring day job and take to history writing completely. It also led me to establish what is known as the Archive of Indian Music, probably India's first digital sound archive for vintage gramophone recordings, which we are trying to rescue. So many things happened only thanks to this one woman and my obsession with her. So I think the biggest thanks I owe to her more than anyone else. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Briefly, what was the contribution that people like her made to understand that and put it in perspective? I think for the longest time, the human mind was very, very curious about, recording your voice on a physical device and having it play back. That was something. Is it possible? This was a physicist's problem that faced human beings right from 1850s, and that was when the first ever experiment called this phonautograph was made by this French, scientist called Leon Scott. So this only created visual images of the sound. As you spoke into that horn, a stylus would move and then it would record the visual image of how the voice waves go on it. You could not play that music back from it. So scientists then started, the discovery was made, then improvements, evolutions happen. And so you had Thomas Edison, who comes with the phonograph in 1877, which was the first device in human history which actually could not only record sound but also have it play back. And so the medium to record all this music was in these cylinders. Initially they were tin cylinders and then wax cylinders, and inside this wax those impressions or sound waves would be created. And this was a very portable device, so they could take it easily from one place to the other, record anything. It was more like a research interest, that how do people across the world talk. So there were lots and lots of ethnographic recordings that happened in different parts of the world, and a lot of people came to India too. If you see, this is, Raja Deen Dayal, one of the earliest photographers of India in 1880s in the Nizam's court in Hyderabad. So it was, if you see, all of them are hooking themselves up to the common, place where you record voice and you hear it back. And the children are all amazed, has someone got inside this cylinder? Who is speaking from inside? Some of them also came, this is a 1901 photograph of a person from Vienna called Felix Exner, who comes to Madras and records all the Pandits there in the Adyar library in Madras, chanting Mahabharata and other Sanskrit verses. And people also participated in this enterprise, but you can see how bad the quality of the sound. I'll just play one very small part of it. This is actually a recording of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, but so obviously, while this was a great experiment, though there was a commercial potential, nobody had really explored that. And that came only later in that decade with Emily Berliner, who comes up with what is known as the gramophone. And that kind of revolutionized, music recording across the world. The gramophone company was set up. So instead of the cylindrical, wax cylinder, now there was a spherical disc. And high school physics says whenever something goes against a cylinder, there is a lot of resistance, but a spherical surface faces lesser resistance. So the quality of sound was much better, and you could also make multiple copies to sell it everywhere. And so he was business minded, and so he started the Gramophone company in London and started sending people to all parts of the world on what was known as recording expeditions. In the Middle Ages, people went out on expeditions to look for new countries. Now they were going to look for new voices. And that was how, after a lot of dithering, somehow India didn't feature in this, their scheme of things. After a lot of dithering, you had this man called Frederick William Gaisberg, who first comes to India in 1902. And he was here, he comes to the then capital of India, which was Calcutta, and he's taken by these very, even now when someone white-skinned comes, we try to impress them to our best ability by being one of them. I think it was the same 100 years ago too, where he wanted to hear genuine, Indian classical music, but he was taken to all these theatres in Calcutta where they were playing badly arranged Western music and Romeo and Juliet plays and all of this, which he hated. And in his diary he writes, which I actually got in Berlin when I went looking for him and from his family, he says, and I quote him, "Our first visit was to the classic theatre, where a performance of Romeo and Juliet in the most unconventional form was being given. Quite arbitrarily, there was introduced a chorus of young nautch girls, heavily bleached with rice powder and dressed in transparent gauze. To hear them sing was nothing short of appalling. One had to erase all the memories of European opera houses and concert halls. The very foundations of my musical training were thoroughly undermined. I had yet to learn that the Oriental ear was unappreciative of chords and harmonic treatment and only demanded the rhythmic beat of the accompaniment of drums. At this point, we left in disgust. So it was almost as if the East and the West will never meet when it comes to music. Just to give you an idea of what kind of theatre recordings this poor man might have been exposed to, there is one clip, which a small part of it.
फ्रेड नाटक कंपनी के असीरे हिर्स के तमाशे में सलीम और हसीना ने गाया हुआ गाना, अरे वो हसीना, अरे वो हसीना, तुझे देख के आया पसीना, कहाँ गया मेरा दिल का नगीना। अरे दरवाजा तो खोल, खोलती हूँ। मैं कब से दरवाजे की फाटक में से देख रहा हूँ, तू क्या करती है? अजी कपड़े बदल रही है। अर्र, कपड़े बदल रही है, तब तो मैं घेरता भी और देखता भी हूँ। खुला रहेगा इसलिए। थोड़ी खलबल है प्यारी, थोड़ी खलबल है न्यारी।
I mean, I think Gaisberg's point is well made that, you know, the kind of disdain he thought India was a crass country with no musical sensibilities. But then a lot of it was going to change when he met this woman, the first diva, if I may call her, of Indian classical music, which was Gauhar Jaan. And Manjunath ji mentioned briefly about her background. Fantastic lineage, born of a Hindu grandmother, a British grandfather, an Armenian Christian father called Robert William Yoward, and a mother, Victoria Hemmings. She was baptized, she was born in 1873 in Azamgarh in Uttar Pradesh, and baptized at the Holy Trinity Church in Allahabad as Eileen Angelina Yoward initially. And when she was about 8 or 9 years old, the parents had a bitter divorce, and she runs away with the mother runs away with a Muslim benefactor called Khurshid, who takes her to Banaras, and that is where her mother, Badi Malka Jaan, from Victoria Hemmings, she turns into a Muslim and changes her name to Badi Malka. And her daughter had no choice. She had to follow the religion of her mother. She became Gauhar from Eileen Angelina Yoward. And Malka was always, very accomplished in music, in dance, in poetry and so on. And Banaras, with its kind of environment, gave her the right environment to hone all these artistic talents. And she started composing poetry in Urdu. Now this book cover that you see, it says Bibi Malka Jaan of Banaras, now at Calcutta. To get this was a challenge where almost a year I went across the country to the Khuda Baksh library in Patna, to the Rampur Raza library. Nowhere in India was this book available. The only copy of this was available in London, in the British Library. Thankfully, they've at least preserved it. We would have sold it off, to the Raddiwala. But then that clearly has, so Makhzane Ulfate Malika, or the treasure trove of Malka's love. 1886, you can see the year also. She published this book. She became such a famous woman. And her daughter obviously took to where her mother, got her to. She was naturally talented, a child prodigy, like our chief guest here. And so she took to music like a fish takes to water. And so then after Banaras, they moved to Calcutta because that was the land of opportunity, the Indian capital then. And Nawab Wajid Ali Shah had then been exiled to Calcutta after the 1857 uprising. And along with him, the entire tehzeeb and Kala of Lucknow also made its way to Calcutta. Artists, musicians, dancers, poets, to make a career in the art, you had to be in Calcutta. And so Wajid Ali Shah, mother and daughter become court musicians there, and very soon their fortunes turn. They buy an entire, a row of houses in what is known as now the Chitpur Road, and those days it was called the Gauhar buildings. I went looking for that house also based on some documents. This is how ugly it looks, unfortunately, now. The pink color building next to the Nakhoda Mosque, which is there on Rabindra Sharoni or Chitpur Road in Calcutta. There are people, hanging all their undergarments and foreign exchange and all kinds of things, which was once probably Gauhar Manzil or Gauhar building. And this is the street where probably her Feeton used to go. But Calcutta becomes home for this woman, and she very soon takes to performance, and as Manjunath ji was mentioning, she becomes the toast of the town. Darbhanga Raj, where she gives her first concert. Even Mysore, Chamarajendra Vadiyar invites her as for concerts. She becomes, the darling songstress of India, along with several other Tawayefs. You see her sitting right in the middle. A very, very prominent face of Indian classical music towards the turn of the century. And at that same time, Gaisberg has just come to India, thoroughly frustrated, not knowing where to go. Should I pack my equipment and go back to London because this is a horrible country? And that is when somebody takes him to the soiree of a wealthy zamindar of Calcutta. And he sees this Feeton coming there, and out of that, and he writes all this in his memoirs, that this lady, fair-skinned, because she had Anglo-Indian descent, fair-skinned, very well-dressed, she steps out, and all the Europeans are gawking at her, and she steps down. She knows how to charm people, so she puts her hand out and says, "Good evening, gentlemen," and he's like quite stunned. And then when he goes in the concert, everybody, is listening to her, but then when he goes out for a little breath of fresh air, he finds people are perched on everything, a scaffolding, a tree, just to catch a glimpse of her. And that gave him an idea how popular this lady was, and so recording her would be a fantastic commercial proposition. And so she became his first choice. So he sent his agents to her house to negotiate, and she was a tough business woman. She negotiated, bargained, and so much. She said, "If you want my money, you need to pay me money. If you want my time." And she charged 3,000 rupees for one recording session, which probably went to several lakhs, by those days' standards. And thus it was in November 1902 that Gauhar entered this very rudimentary makeshift studio in Calcutta, where she recorded and became India's first recorded superstar and gramophone celebrity. Now, before I play her voice, I think as Manjunath ji rightly hit the nail on the head, that you can today our technologically trained ears may find this, oh my God, it's so screechy, high-pitched, terrible, and all of that. But if you look at the context and the history behind it, you'll be able to appreciate the clip better when I play it. So the artist had to jump onto a table like this, which was a recording studio. And if you see, there is a horn on the wall, and that was the recording apparatus. Now, this was the time of acoustic recording. Electrical recording had not come. Mechanical recording was what it was. So the artist had to crane his or her head into that horn and scream as loudly as you could. And depending on how loudly you shouted, there was a stylus on the other end which would vibrate and cut etches on a shellac disc which was on the other side of the horn. Now, there are musicians here, Indian musicians, while singing, they tend to move their heads and hands and the raga overtakes you. That would spoil the quality of the noise, the audio energy going into that horn. So there would be two agents who would catch your hands, one who would hold your head and push you into that horn and ask you to, bellow hard. So, and you can imagine now maybe when you listen to her voice, you'll be able to empathize with the poor woman.
My name is Gauhar Jaan. Yes, Umri. Bhaiya, Rai Sahab, Ganpat.
and the thing trails off because it was only, as Manjunath ji mentioned, 3 minutes duration. No retakes possible. If you make a mistake, you'll be penalized because you can't keep recording on the master shellac. And so almost like Pressy writing in literature, write in 50 words. You had to present something as expansive as Indian classical music, where one rag can be elaborated for hours together in just 3 minutes. And that announcement towards the end, in fact, the book's title, My Name is Gauhar Jaan, when it came in 2010, my bad luck that Karan Johar's film My Name is Khan had come out at that time. So my publisher said, "Is this the cheap marketing trick that you're trying to ape that?" But it was not that, because every recording would end with this announcement. Not only Gauhar, others also who sang later, because though the recording would be made, the master recording would be made in India, in Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, the big cities, the master shellac would then be shipped all the way to Hanover in Germany. And there, for the technician, it was an anonymous voice. He would listen to the whole recording, identify the artist with this announcement, then multiple copies would be stamped, labels put, and sent back to India for sales. So that was a difficult, supply chain process of the production of this recording. So 3 minutes sitting and screaming and screeching into those horns, remembering, and in that 3 minutes you have to do a little bit of improvisation, give those tans, sargams, give the listener a sense of the aesthetics of the raga and the bandish and so on. It was a huge, huge task. And also remember, maybe these poor accompanists were keeping the time and saying, "Jaldi karo, it is getting over." So, wind up. And so suddenly she's saying something and it trails off. Interestingly, when, recording came to India, and Gauhar Jaan's records later started selling like hotcakes. In her career, she's supposed to have recorded close to 600 records in about 12 to 13 languages, which included even, French and English and all kinds of languages, different forms, Kajri, Chaiti, Hori, Dadra, Tappa, Thumri, Khayals, all of these, because you didn't know the audience, consumer research was not there. What did the audience actually want? And depending on that, more would be recorded. And multiple languages. There's one in English which says very suggestively, "My love is a little bird that flies from tree to tree." So these kind of flippant songs and also classical music. And if you see, multiple record companies started coming to India. Gramophone company from London, but you had Nicole from Germany, you had Pathe from France, Sunday, Singer, numerous companies, because during that time, once the world wars began, Europe market really collapsed. And so India was the market which actually sustained the entire music industry for the Gramophone company. And what would probably warm the hearts of the women in the audience is that when recording technology came to India first, the men folk stayed away, most of them. It was only women across north, south, east, west of India who actually took to recording, overcame a lot of inhibitions. And I'm so amazed by the way that has come full circle, with today also people saying, AI technology is this going to dilute literature? Is this going to make our, publishing industry redundant? I think the men folk then had the same problems about recording, saying, how can you do something like this in 3 minutes? Our Shastriya Sangeeta, it's such a divine art. How do you commercialize it like this? And 3 minutes screaming, shouting. So we will not do it. But if these women had not overcome all those challenges and gone to those studios and recorded the way they did, I think the music industry would not be where it is today. So similarly, today, it's again a delicious irony that the first book through technology intervention is the biography of the first lady who used technology to record her voice. So, somewhere the stars fall, without our conscious effort also. So across the country, you had Janki Bai of Allahabad, Husna Bai of Banaras, Zohra Bai of Agra, Malka Jaan Agrewali, many others. And in South India too, in our own city, you had Bengaluru Nagratnamma, who was among the earliest musicians from Carnatic music. Dhanakoti Ammal of Kanchipuram, Salem Godavari, Coimbatore Thai, Bai Sundrabai of Pune. So Coimbatore Thai was also such a superstar that there was a French musician called Maurice Delage, who I believe in 1911 he heard her records in Paris, and he writes that her microtonal variations sent chills up my spine, and he comes all the way to Madras looking for her, and these two people collaborate, and Maurice Delage then creates an entire Western composition called Raga Malika, which is inspired by Coimbatore Thai's music. But you ask today, musicians, lovers of music, names of any of these people, unfortunately, none of them would even remember that such, women existed. And there was a reason for that, which I will cover. The glory years, of course, what this technology did is, like we were discussing now in the context of AI, it makes things reach people faster. So before, only those limited rich people in that zamindar's soiree could listen to Gauhar Jaan. Others had to sit outside and have a glimpse of her. Now Gauhar Jaan came into your house, not embodied, but through her voice on a recording. It was safe to listen to her that way. Otherwise, going to a Tawayef's kotha can be morally decadent for someone. So it reached out to people in a large way, and these women, all of them, just imagine they were all negotiating with foreign agents in a language they probably didn't understand. Gauhar knew English, but the others did not. Still, the dexterity with which they bargained their fees also and ensured that they got a lifestyle, it catapulted their life to great prosperity. This was a postcard that was made, if you see, made in Austria, the thing below. So a Tawayef's photograph, Gauhar Jaan's photograph, appearing on matchboxes made in Austria. That is the power of technology, which ensures that you are able to go out of a small confine. How many ever people are hearing here, maybe the live stream will have 100x of the number of people accessing this information. Similarly, music made that outreach to so many people, and it obviously made these women very, very rich. And Gauhar, by nature, was a very hedonistic woman. She had this, this thing to drive ghoda gadis, phaeton of 6-7 horses. And in the thoroughfares of Calcutta, with those 7 horses, white Arabian stallions, she would go, riding every evening through Eden Gardens and that whole Maidan area in Calcutta. And it is said that once the cavalcade of the Viceroy crossed her, and she was always, fair-skinned, dressed in, goggles and finery, jewels. So he thought she was the queen of some riyasat, and so he doffed his hat in reverence to her. She also acknowledged him and drove away, apparently. And much later, when he realized that this was a common Tawayef of Calcutta, he was enraged, and he said, "You have to pay a fine of some 100 rupees for doing this." She said, "Only 100 rupees. I will pay a fine of 100 rupees every day, but I will go on my, jolly rides through Calcutta." So the kind of that bindas kind of attitude, the chutzpah that these women had, empowered by technology, if I dare say, is something that is very fascinating to see. On another occasion, Gandhiji asked her to sing for the Congress party and raise funds. And she agreed, but putting a condition to him that, you need to be personally present in the concert, only then I will perform. And he was amused, who is this woman who's actually putting conditions to me, but he agreed. On the day of the concert, the tickets had sold, like a hot cake. She had made, I think, 12,000 rupees from the sale of tickets. And she scans the audience, and Gandhiji could not come. And he had sent a representative, Shaukat Ali, to attend on his behalf. And after that, they meet in the green room, and she's counting all the money. She gives him 6,000 rupees. He says, "What about the rest of the money?" She says, "You go and please tell your Mahatma that he talks about truth and honesty. But by not coming himself and sending you, he has kept only half his promise. So I will also give you only half the..." I mean, can you imagine the kind of attitude that one could have? And that's not just arrogance. I think that is, Manjunathji, Venkatramji would agree that an artist's respect that comes out of legitimate the tapasya that is done to gain that art. It is, one could look at it as, oh, how haughty and proud she was. On another occasion, the Maharaja of Datia calls her for a concert. Now, if you don't want to attend, you will put some excuse. She said, oh, Datia is too small province for me to go all the way. So let me up my this thing and say, I want an entire train to be booked for me. The Datia Maharaja actually books an entire train for her. There are about 110 people who accompany her on this thing, including her horses, her bawarchi, her, everyone with the cooking utensils who go all the way to Datia. So obviously, in all of this, one thing is clear: fiscal management is a big zero. So all the money that you're getting, she was very fond of cats, like one of our teammates here, Pavitra, who's very fond of cats too. So she would celebrate, the birthdays of her cats and marry their cats, and then the parties would be thrown for 20,000 rupees and all of that. So obviously, money is finite item, so that kept depleting, and slowly that also led to downfall. And this was another postcard. You can see in each of those the confidence. If body language expert is there, one would be able to analyze what the attitude of this person was. Of course, the gramophone, as I said, became so popular in India. Indian market was the mainstay, and the gramophone company went on an overdrive to do marketing campaigns. Our modern companies can learn so much about how MNCs operate and their marketing, strategies. These were actually advertisements that came, which I took from the EMI archive in London. On the right, you see the gramophone Saraswati. So instead of the kudam of the veena, you have the gramophone horn coming out, literally telling you that, your goddess of learning has accepted the technology. Now you also better do it. And similarly, this figure, where in a wealthy Bengali gentleman's house, perhaps a zamindar, you have the man of the house, you have the lady of the house, not even in parda, also standing there. You have an old man, you have kids also sitting there. Down you have a dark-skinned gentleman who's probably the servant of the house. And of course, you have that Nippo, the dog, which is the logo of HMV, his master's voice. So in one image, it tried to convey to the Indians that the gramophone is for everybody. Upper class, lower class, man, woman, young, old, even animal and human, everybody can enjoy this music. So literally it was selling India to the Indians at a cost of 25 rupees per machine, which is what the gramophone company did, and made a lot of money. And these women also made money in the process. But then we men entered, and we men did do what we do best. We first stay away largely. Then when they saw with alarm the kind of success, money and reputation these women were amassing, around that time you had the anti-notch campaign, where starting from Madras, then Mysore, several other places, all performing women. There was very strict hierarchies in the Devdasi or the Tawaif community, but all performing women were branded as common prostitutes. A huge moral brigade that went against them, and in 1930 you had the abolition of the practice itself, with no alternatives made for their rehabilitation. What would they do for their survival? This was all that they had. Generations of their mothers, grandmothers had survived on this art. Suddenly one morning you are said you are banned from performance. Where do those people go? Most of them, died in poverty, took to flesh trade, so many things like that. But some of them reinvented themselves. They always knew how to reinvent, adapt to new challenges, be it technology or social challenges. Many of them started entering films. So if you see many of the early, actresses, they all came from this community. Nargis's mother, Jaddan Bai, she was a Devdasi Tawaif community. M.S. Subbulakshmi made the, long journey from Madurai in one of those families to what she became. So Siddheshwari Devi, who was Siddheshwari Bai, similarly Rasulan Bai, so many others. Begum Akhtar, who was Akhtari Bai Faizabadi, Tawaif, suddenly becomes Begum Akhtar. You marry a wealthy patron and you settle to social acceptance. But a lot of them died, as I said, in anonymity, and in the process, their life stories and also their music actually was totally consigned to the dustbins of history. People may have their records, but you don't know who sung that record. But somewhere, I feel these women left their copyright on it. You can take away my life, you can take away the story of my life, my challenges, but thanks to the technology, I'm telling my name. My name is Gauhar Jaan. Mera naam Janki Bai Allahabad. That nobody is going to be able to take away from me come centuries. So literally capturing artistic space that way through this. And that is the sad story of all these women. And of course, Gauhar's life, apart from fiscal mismanagement, like any tawaif, she fell in love with all the wrong men who only loved her for her money, for her fame. Each one, cheated her. The only love she found was this Amrit Keshav Nayak, whose mention also comes in that clip that you heard. In Bombay, they had a 2-year affair, live-in relationship in those days, and they composed that Aan Baan Jia Mein Lagi together. It almost symbolic of their love story together. And I think he was looking for intellectual companionship, but he also dies, and then she falls in love with other people who literally, court cases are filed against her. She loses all her property, and it is then that she comes to Mysore. She's literally reduced to penury and beggary, where she's selling her bandishes for 1 rupee each. And that is when Kanthirava Narasimharaj Vadiyar hears about her, the Yuvaraja, and he invites her, and the Maharaja Krishnaraj Vadiyar, Nalvadi Krishnaraj Vadiyar, invites her to Mysore. And this is a photograph, if you see 3rd April 1928, someone made a sketch of hers. So from this I deduce that, she had this hunched back, maybe she had those spectacles, old, very, disheveled, frustrated in life, facing court cases, health problems, as Manjunath ji so evocatively said, losing touch with your own art. And new stars have started coming up. By then, electrical recording has come up. 1925, microphones start coming, and men start entering the field. Then all this high, screechy, noise-filled things are pushed. One new person, superstar comes, you see in Bollywood, new superstars displace the old ones. So in that anonymity, she comes to Mysore. So that was a fictionalized account to start the book, also in a way that how frustrated she could have been. Only 500 rupees? What do they take me for? Do you know how much I used to earn in my heydays? And then she throws off that memo of appointment. But then she lived all of 2 years in Mysore. And that is when you see also the Statesman, I got the obituary news of Gauhar Jaan's death in Mysore on 17 January 1930. And at the Krishnaraja Indra Hospital there. Now, when I was doing my research, I went to the KR hospital, masquerading as her grandson, with some Muslim name to myself. I wanted to know why she died, because she was only 57. And it was not a age to die, maybe. What was the cause for death? I wanted to take the death certificate. The death certificate I do get in the book. It is in the appendix. The reason of death is blank. Maybe she committed her own end, one doesn't know. And then my madness went even further. I tried to locate her tomb. Such a famous superstar, somewhere, a kabar of this person should be there in Mysore. So with a Maulvi, we went all the way to all the pre-independence Kabristan committee of Mysore, all the pre-independence kabars, and then nowhere, 1930 and beyond, we didn't find her grave at all. So the first recorded superstar of India probably lies in an unmarked, unsung grave. Of course, coming back home, I got a lot of flack at home. What have you done? You've gone to a Muslim cemetery, so I had to take purification baths and change my sacred thread, and all of that happened. But then it was a very sad, this thing that, all this celebrity status that Sir so beautifully mentioned, it is so ephemeral. It can just go away. Today we are talked about by the whole world, but tomorrow, if your destiny is bad, it can go away. But then at least this forgotten nightingale of India, as Manjunath ji very beautifully put it, I think has made a re-entry into our life with the same spirit that she had, that don't fear technology, embrace it, adapt to it, because you cannot fight it. You will either have to upskill yourself or you have to be left behind. DTP today is a common thing. 30 years back when computers were introduced, people were saying, are people going to lose clerical jobs? Today, no, people are, you need human beings at the end of the day. Computers cannot do everything. So even whether it is AI or anything, it is a technology that needs to be embraced, and the literary space is something that we have made a very earnest attempt, Sandeep, myself, the entire NAV team, to ensure that that purity of the literature is also mentioned. Our entire back end, the integrated platform is powered by Sarvam AI, which is our technology partner, along with and as you know, Sarvam AI is building India's first sovereign LLM model, which was also showcased in the India AI Summit. And Pratyush Kumar and the Sarvam team was there on stage with all the tech giants and the Prime Minister of India himself. So we're trying our best to ensure that the authenticity, the Indic models, the Indian language which Sarvam ensures is brought out in its full clarity, we are also using, and numerous other tools for the TTS models, text-to-speech models also, to ensure that this comes out with the authenticity to the maximum extent possible. I will conclude here with a small clip of hers. It's traditional in Hindustani concerts to end with Rag Bhairavi, Sindhu Bhairavi in our tradition. So I think as a musical presentation, a small piece of hers in Rag Bhairavi. Thank you so much for sharing our joy on this very, very important occasion. And we need all your support and blessings to ensure that NAV AI brings in more and more literature in a lot of Indian languages, take Indian literature to the rest of the world as well. Thank you. Thank you so much.